Welcome, everybody. Welcome to WPAT 930 AM. We are live to over 30 million homes, but I want to tell you, we are also live on YouTube, and we're sending out the link on our social networks. So we want to let you know that you can see our wonderful guest. There it is, Mr. Lee Kemp, three-time NCAA wrestling champ. And by the way, sometime I'm going to ask you that question. I think that's sometimes more significant than even world champ, but three-time world champion Lee Kemp, Olympic wrestler Lee Kemp. We're going to get to all the information. Me, I'm a wrestler. By the way, Lee, about 5 years ago, there was a senior event. I went and wrestled.
Fantastic.
I said, please don't pray me, because I said it's been 42 years since I've been on the mat. I couldn't believe it. Wow. And I had one move. I deleted the rest of the video because he killed me, but he didn't kill me. Please join us on YouTube. We're going to put it on. You can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com Christian Fellowship Council. Just posting that. Mr. Lee, so we have a background. You and I are similar. You were at 10 times higher level than I was. I was a freshman with 6,000 home fans because they came to see Shorty Hitchcock, who you know, who was third in the world, outstanding wrestler in the nation. And he was the senior year. So we had 6,000 home fans, and I used to lose in front of 6,000 home fans.
Oh my goodness.
I couldn't buy a coffee the next day. Everybody walked down the street. That's the guy. I had to wear a hat and put my head down. So wrestling was big in Pennsylvania, as you know.
Yes.
I'm really excited to talk to you, Lee. Thanks for joining us here, our CFC Worldwide page. So now we're going to get into life. So what I want to do, Lee, if it's okay for you, the very first thing is, I'm really excited to have you. But in addition to being three-time world champ, in addition to three-time NCAA champ, not many people had a whole movie, a whole documentary written about you, about them. Yours is called Wrestled Away. It just came out. I watched it. I loved it. I'm a fan of wrestling. So I want to, at least what I want to do now is I want to show the video trailer. I want to show you the trailer of Wrestled Away.
There's no easy dance whenever you go to wrestle with Lee Kemp.
Lee is a legend. I believe he is a hero. I just feel like his story's never been told.
He'd wrestle one match and he'd win. He'd wrestle another match and he'd win. And he'd win and he'd win.
He was going to be the favorite to win the Olympic Games. His chances of winning were extremely high.
And I have notified the Olympic Committee that with Soviet invading forces in Afghanistan, neither the American people nor I will support sending an Olympic team to Moscow.
In the sport of wrestling, the Olympic gold medal is the pinnacle.
You could be a world champion for the next 20 years, but if you don't win the Olympics, people won't know about you.
Lee was a world champion and maybe the best dude on the planet. And then just to have somebody say, hey, this whole thing you've been training all this time for is not going to happen anymore, and have it just yanked away, what do you do next?
He disappeared. Everyone just lost track of him.
When he went to jail, that was the lowest point of his life.
When I think of Lee Kemp, I think that you have a second chance. Always a second chance.
Somebody like that should be praised. I mean, Lee is one of the greatest American wrestlers of all time.
I want to encourage everybody to go and watch that movie. Where can you see it, Lee?
The movie you can watch it on almost all the video on demand platforms like YouTube, Amazon Prime, Google Play, pretty much everything except Netflix. Or, you can go to my website too, and I can direct you to the links from there at leekemp.com.
LeeKemp.com. Kemp is spelled just like it sounds, K-E-M-P, L-L-E-D. It's short for Leroy. I found that out. I was doing some background.
Yes.
But Lee, pretty exciting. I love the movie. That I'm going to convince everybody to go out there. But we have a lot to talk about. a lot to go through. We're going to be done a little bit before 4:00. And you were very kind. I appreciate you prepared me. So we're going to go through a document you sent us.
Sort of a autobiography, actually. In fact, I am actually going to be revising this into a book, an autobiography book filled with more narrative about the various events that happened in my life. But this was done by the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. They put together a series of profiles on former wrestlers, and it was called Etched in Stone, which is the name of the series, Etched in Stone. And what I sent you was my feature in the Etched in Stone series.
Okay, so before we go through that, I want you to take us through your younger years before you got into wrestling, because I know that you had some brothers, and you didn't think a lot of people didn't think you would be a good wrestler, right?
No, I started late in life, but just rewind a little bit. I was adopted when I was 5 years old. So my biological name was Darnell Freeman. My biological mother, I met her when I was in my 38. So I have a relationship with her now even, but she named me Darnell, and I had an older sister named Darlene. So in terms of being an athlete, being a wrestler, that I have to start there because I got adopted by a black family, an older black family named Leroy and Jesse Kemp. They wanted an older child. I happened to fit the bill. I was 5. They wanted a son, and they wanted to honor me with the name of my father. So I became Leroy Kemp Jr.
That's great.
And then I'm a child of the 60s. So I went through, I was 12 when Martin Luther King was assassinated, 1968. And I knew what that meant. And most major cities in the United States were just going through a lot of frustration and just chaos, just dangerous protesting, all that stuff.
I remember we're the same age. I'm just 1 year older.
Yep. So my parents moved from Cleveland. We didn't live in the inner city, but we lived in the city of Cleveland. We moved to Chardon, which was a farming community in Northeast Ohio. You may be familiar with it a little bit because you're familiar with the East, but Chardon was 30 miles northeast of Cleveland. But it was a farm, and that introduced me to hard work. My dad was, a stern disciplinarian from the South, as you could imagine. You may have had a father like that. You couldn't talk back. You had to, all the things that should be in our society today, but are not. But I got raised like that. And so, we had this 25-acre farm with animals. We had cows, pigs, chickens, hay to bale, all kinds of stuff. And here's a kid who's 12, just left Cleveland. Now all of a sudden, I'm doing all this farm work, and never really ever thinking I was going to be a wrestler. We had wrestling in gym class, but I played basketball because that was what I was familiar with coming from Cleveland. And so the wrestling story, as you can see, is just a precarious one. It's not one that was planned. It was one that I call it, a divine appointment. That's what I call it.
Okay, I like that.
Because I didn't have anything to do with it. However, once I got into it, and I got into it through basically being horrible at basketball. I scored 2 points in 2 full years of playing basketball in 7th and 8th grade, because we went to Chardon right after 6th grade. So I went 7th grade and 8th grade. I went off for basketball team. And that was my first experience in organized sports in Chardon. I'm not so sure I would have been in organized sports had I lived in Cleveland, because it just wasn't emphasized. It was just a whole different world, as you can imagine. City, country, with animals and, land and all that stuff. So, and then the kids there were farm kids. So they were big, strong farm kids. So you just sort of get in step with the environment that you're in. And one thing I will say, going to Chardon, it introduced me to being around white people, basically. And living in Cleveland, I never would have had that experience. My world was an all black world in Cleveland. And in one summer, we went to an all white one. And I was one of two black kids in the whole school. I think the Kemp family was probably one of two black families in all of Chardon. Like, you never saw a black person just walking around like you would in most cities today, even up there.
Well, there had to be some prejudice there that you experienced, I'm sure.
Well, yes, it was, but I was prepared by my parents at home. They weren't educated formally, but they were very smart, very intuitive people, hardworking, and they just believed in the premise that if you work hard and you stay positive and keep trying, something positive and good is going to come out of all that. And
so then how do you get involved with wrestling? Because I want to get into that now.
Well, I quit the basketball team after 2 years of not really playing.
2 years and 2 points. Okay.
That's 2 years and 2 points. That's probably time to leave that sport, So the wrestling coach was recruiting, as coaches do. He was our gym teacher, our gym teacher. So he taught wrestling in gym class, and he kept trying to encourage me. And he said, Lee, you're never going to make the basketball team. You should just quit and go off of the wrestling team. And I did. Just because he encouraged me and told me that he would support me, and he did. And I made the freshman team, and he said, if you go off of the team, I've got a spot open at 138. You'll be wrestling next weekend. And I just got off the bench in basketball. So and I thought that's better than sitting on the bench. So I went out and had my wrestling uniform on. And sure enough, next weekend I was wrestling, and I won my match.
Wow.
And I was hooked. I was hooked. It was just freshman level, but still I won my match. The next year I made the varsity as a 10th grader, sophomore. And I had 11 wins, 8 losses, and 3 ties. We had ties back then in Ohio. So a 500 season, as you might imagine, with someone who just started the sport, making the varsity. But what happened the next year was nothing short of miraculous, actually. I went undefeated and won the state tournament, beating the defending state champion. So that's a whole story all by itself, how I got immersed so deeply in the sport of wrestling and was able to have the confidence to try to be a state champion. You've heard athletes, you've heard people say things in all areas, whether it's sports, business, whatever. They'll say, I'm going to do something. Well, if you're, an experienced person in that discipline that you just heard this person say, I'm going to get to the top, you don't see them doing anything any different than what they've been doing, you know that they're not going to make it. The difference was I had the experience to meet Dan Gable after that mediocre season of myself.
So let me give some background on who Dan Gable is, just for everybody who's here, because we have people who are wrestling fans, but people that aren't. Dan Gable is correct me if I'm wrong, Lee, noticed as the most famous wrestler in America. You're probably you're right there, up there with him. But he, in college, was undefeated, going to be 4-time national champ. I don't know if that's ever been done since then. And then he lost the last match of his senior year, or was that junior year? Was that kind of right, correctly? And then he became Olympic champion. The Russians said, we will find someone to defeat Dan Gable, but they never did. So go ahead, take it from there.
I'm glad you filled your listeners in, because unless they know how good he actually was, he was the Babe Ruth of wrestling, if you will, Absolutely. Or the LeBron James of wrestling, or the Kobe Bryant, or whatever. So there was no one better than him. And the Russians were the best at wrestling. They couldn't find a person. They vowed that they would find someone, and that was the Soviet Union back then. It was Russia, and all the various republics were just one nation. And now it's broken up, into the various republics in Russia. So back then it was tougher. And so my high school wrestling coach, after that mediocre season, took me and 2 other wrestlers to a wrestling camp in around the Columbus, Ohio area. And Dan Gable was there as the head clinician or head teacher. And I was the student that was sitting at his feet, listening to every single thing, taking in every word, every nuance, everything. I watched him eat lunch to see if there was something different about this guy. I watched him work out. I became so fascinated with the fact that he was so good, and I wanted to be just as good. So it was a week-long camp, not long, 5 days. And I'll interject this too. In wrestling, in order to teach wrestling, you've got to demonstrate wrestling moves. So, and you know this since you wrestled, when a clinician or a teacher is ready to show a move, he will ask for a partner because he's got to demonstrate the move on someone. Guess who that partner was? I just started wrestling. The point I really want to make here is that when you want something bad enough, you can't be embarrassed. You're not fearful. You're not scared. You raise your hand. You get up and you do it. And I was not going to let anyone get up there before me because I thought that if I could be that close to this legend, that it would help me become a better wrestler. And when he was demonstrating the holds on me, I felt I would learn them better. No different than sitting in the front of the class. Typically if you're scared or don't get called on, you'll sit in the back of the class. You'll never raise your hand. Just the opposite. When I was wanting to become a good wrestler, I was right there. He was demonstrating the moves on me. And I was so awkward and so new. I was such a novice that I poked him in the eye once because he wanted me to do one thing. I just reached out and I poked him in the eye because I was so uncoordinated and didn't really know wrestling that well. That's how crazy this is. But the one thing I will say about Dan Gable, he never made me feel embarrassed, never made me feel uncomfortable for doing that. And he kept me as his drill partner the whole rest of the camp. Although the next day, though, the one day I poked him in the eye, the next day he came back. When I poked him, it made his eye a little black and blue under the bottom. So it was noticeable. So when he came to practice that day and he was teaching, he said, "Where's that guy I was going with yesterday?" And he pointed to his eye and says, "I'm going to have fun today. I'm going to get back at him." So it was, he had a little sense of humor there. And so anyway, that's important because without that camp, now maybe I would have latched onto someone else, but I don't know who. It certainly wouldn't have been someone of the caliber.
The best ever.
Yeah. So I would say I would not have developed the same way. My imagination just went wild. So the power of imagination is what has created every known invention that we can see. It's created everything, every accomplishment, every ambition, all that just starts with an idea that comes into your mind.
Now, Lee, I want to mention something to our audience. By the way, please join us at cfcpage.com, cfcpage.com. We're live on YouTube. Go to facebook.com/Christian Fellowship Council. We're there. But I just want to mention right now that Lee, although he's retired from wrestling, he has opened up a speaking organization. He is a mentor, a speaker. He's available for speaking engagements. Go to leekemp.com, and hey, book him. You'll love what he has to say. Now, I want to bring us to the next point because you wrestled Dan Gable in a match at least 2 more times in the future. Take us through that real quick.
Once more. Just once.
Once more?
Yeah, well, at the camp, it wasn't a match. It was just him demonstrating wrestling technique. I was just a student. He was the teacher. But to your point, I actually wrestled him in an actual match. And in the photo that's showing to your audience, it's a photo right above the person's head that's holding the microphone.
Yeah, right here.
That's Dan Gable. And I was 18 years old. So let me just put it in context. I met Dan Gable the summer after my sophomore year in high school. So fast forward, not even 4 years. And that summer, Dan Gable won the Olympic gold medal. So about a month after I was at that camp, a month and a half, probably 6 weeks after I was at that camp with him in the summer of 1972, he went on to Munich, Germany, and won a gold medal in the Olympic Games. I watched him win that gold medal on a black and white TV at home. And I knew that I was
watched
just,
it too. I watched it too.
And I knew I was just with him. So that had an impact on me as well. So from that moment on, when I got back home from that camp, I did everything I saw Dan Gable do. So, you know, I won 2 state titles after that, went through a freshman year in college. So this was the beginning of my sophomore year. So not even 4 years after I met him, I was facing him in an actual competition.
And
why?
What he was doing, he was coming back, right, out of retirement. Is that what's true?
Yes, he was making a comeback. He did retire after the 72 Olympic Games. In 1975, you know, just 6-7 months prior to the Olympic year in 1976, he decided to make a comeback, like a lot of athletes do. He was 26 years old. I was 18. And so in order to start the process of his comeback, he entered a college tournament that I was in. It was an open division college tournament. It was a pretty competitive tournament. A lot of older wrestlers typically would wrestle in it, but now Dan Gable's in this tournament in my weight class. And my college coach tried to get me to not wrestle him. He tried to get me to go up a weight class or go down a weight class or just not wrestle him, because I think he thought getting like annihilated by Dan Gable was going to crush my spirit. Here I was a college athlete. He recruited. He wanted me to do the best I could do for myself and the University of Wisconsin. And I had just placed second as a true freshman in the national tournament the year before. So going into my sophomore year, that was the very first competition.
And by the way, you lost that match in a 3-2 decision.
Well, the match was tied.
Right, it was tied, and it went to decision, right?
No, it went to a judge. It went to 3 officials. Just decided who they thought was the winner.
Right, and it was a split decision.
A split decision, but I scored the only takedown in the match. I scored the only real activity point in the match. He escaped. I escaped. We both had 2 stalling points. But now there's criteria that will break ties, so they don't leave it up to judges just making a decision on just a subjective judgment as to who they thought won. There's criteria that breaks the tie right down.
You would have been a 4-time NCAA champion.
Based on the criteria that they later developed so that you would eliminate judges deciding who would win. I would have won that match, but it doesn't take anything away from Chuck Yeager.
But then I want to move forward here. So we're at the halfway mark here. So you're both in the finals. You and Dan Gable at the finals of this tournament. His comeback tour. What happened?
Just for the listeners too, the match is on YouTube. It's just Google my name and Dan Gable's name. You can see the match.
I saw it.
It was a close match, but the real key point in the match is the last 30 seconds. The match went back and forth, but I was ahead the whole match just by a point. You know, he'd score, I'd score, so I was ahead. The last 30 seconds, he was pressing really hard, as Dan Gable did the entire match. That photo that's over the head of the person holding the microphone, that's how the match, maybe the last 30 seconds, maybe the last 25 of the last 30 seconds was. He was in a real tight bear hug position, almost, you know, had an advantage to score, but I held him off for that 30-second period or 25-second period. Then he let me go to try to do something else. I fought him off and the buzzer went off and I won. The reason I bring that up is the mental part of that last 30 seconds is what I think made me a champion the rest of my career, because so many things went through my mind in that last 30 seconds. I actually thought that I did a good job. You know, Dan Gable didn't beat me up. The match was close. If he would have taken me down, he would have won by a point. That would have been very respectable. All that went through my mind. But also what went through my mind is, why don't you win this? You can win this. Just go ahead and win it. But in the back of my mind, it's like, no, but it's Dan Gable. But then I start thinking, well, I can win this. Doesn't matter if it's Dan Gable. I can win this. So I keep emphasizing that because Dan Gable said that almost 4 years earlier at that camp, because he had talked to us about the Russians, the Soviet Union, wanting to find a wrestler to beat him. and they were the best in the world at wrestling. And Dan said, that Russian puts his single on one leg at a time, just like me. There's nothing that would predispose him to beat me. So I have every chance to win just like he does. And, but I plan to win, is what he said. So that stayed with me. And so when I was wrestling him, what I took away from that is that we decide our future. So in that waning 10 seconds, I decided that I wanted to win this match, and I won. So that was before.
And basically, you stopped his comeback after he lost. He decided not to continue with his comeback.
Nope, he decided to coach because he was an assistant coach at the University of Iowa at that time.
No, he went to coaching, but he wasn't going to continue wrestling.
Correct.
Right. So
he realized that
that's
that was
amazing. That's like someone striking out Babe Ruth every time and hitting more than his home runs. It's like beating the best of the best. It's like playing 1-to-1 with Michael Jordan or whoever and beating that person. Congratulations for that. That's an amazing accomplishment.
Thank you. One thing I want to interject too. I'm friends with Dan Gable, and I asked him to do the documentary. He very graciously provided interviews for it, and I let him know that I'm going to really have this in the documentary. But anyway, see, he said to me during that time when he was being interviewed for the documentary, this was probably like 6 or 7 years ago now. He said, "Lee, it never occurred to me that I would wrestle someone that would actually try to beat me." So isn't that a real profound statement about life? So many people don't try for the ultimate success. They try for a lesser success because they don't think
I'm sure you do this in your speeches, right? How
yes.
You try to get younger people to reset their goals to a higher place, right?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Like there were times when I had that 500 season, I didn't win any tournaments that year, but I was at tournaments, and I think I took 4th in one of the I think it was the district tournament. And before the final started, they had all the trophies laid out on a table, which you're familiar with, right? And in any sport, when you get down to the finals, they have all the trophies laid out. They're going to give to the champions. And before they really got going, I was in the gym early and I looked at all those trophies, and I saw the one that was for the #1 wrestler in my weight class. I saw the one that was for the 2nd, 3rd, and then I ended up taking 4th. So I didn't know I was going to take 4th. I was hoping to get the 3rd place one because I was wrestling for 3rd and 4th. I lost it, so I ended up getting the 4th one. But I watched all those trophies, and then when I was on the award stand, I remember looking up at the guy that was the #1 guy, and I said, somebody's got to win this. Why not be me next time? And
Why not me?
Yes.
Why not you?
Yes.
So listen, go to leekemp.com if you want to have him speak and inspire your youth to dream bigger, to accomplish more than they want to. So you beat him. We're jumping around because the documents I have are not in chronological order. This is you as a young kid with your adopted father and mother, correct?
Yep, not long after I was adopted. So I was probably in that picture, I probably was around 6 years old.
You're
so I was adopted.
Right, okay,
yes.
Okay.
Yep, I was adopted when I was 5. And that was my mother and father to the viewers' right. The man sitting,
yes.
And then the woman, that's my dad, Leroy Sr., and then my mom. And then the other young boy behind me is my cousin, Donald. And Donald, we grew up like brothers together, and that's Donald's mother on my other side, who was a niece to my mother. Wow. So it was a family. So it was a family environment that I got to live in.
I'm sure your parents were very proud of what you accomplished, and what you've accomplished. Here's some quotes for you. You were always hogging the time because you wanted to know more. You wanted to be the best. You wanted to know what was there. So that's kind of your background. You can find out on his website, The Legend of Dan Gable, so that you can understand, what Lee accomplished by beating this gentleman. He had a slow start. This is him. What are you, a freshman here?
No, that was my junior year in high school, and that's my high school wrestling coach, Richard Deppenbrock. He was the coach, the architect of my early success. He's the one that took me to the wrestling camp where I met Dan Gable, and that was an effort on his part. You know, he got in his car, took 3 of us wrestlers.
Well, listen, I want to make a point. Lee Kemp was a 500 wrestler, not even in a gigantic area for wrestling. It was a pretty good area, but not the top in this nation. But he goes to a place where there is a world-class wrestling person who speaks into his life, turned Lee around. So this gentleman, Lee, becomes 3-time NCAA champ, 3-time world champ. So the point is, everybody, I want to make is that a person, a mentor can make a difference in a young person's life. That's very important. It just takes one interaction to inject a vision into them, because Lee had a vision injected into him by Dan Gable. And then he actually defeated his mentor, which is pretty exciting. So go to leekemp.com and invite him to come. But you had a big finish. You finally, in your senior year, state champ, undefeated, correct?
Yes, and the pictures right before that was my junior year, which was the year right after I met Dan Gable. I won the state tournament both years and was undefeated. That's how powerful of an impact that. Now, just meeting him is one thing, but then I had to put in the work. I meet a lot of athletes that say they want to do things, but then they don't put in the work. I was able to witness Dan Gable do some of the work because I watched some of his training, and I started to work harder than probably anyone in the whole country at my age.
You had to.
And as a result, I was very confident. But I can't emphasize enough the photo of the coach wearing the red shirt and me shaking hands with him. That changed my life. That was the culmination of my junior year, of all the hard work. After meeting Dan Gable, not even a year before that, and then I won the state tournament. Now, I was a guy that didn't show a lot of emotion. That was right after my match. Most people were jumping around and, you know, doing backflips, but I just walked out the mat, shook my coach's hand, and that set me on a path that that I'm still on to this day. I'm not competing as an athlete, but in life we have challenges constantly. We have things that we're trying to achieve, things that are difficult, things that seem impossible, things that just like what Dan Gable said, it never occurred to me that you would try to beat me. Well, there's things in life that to other people, they can't understand why this person is trying so hard to achieve this particular thing. Doesn't matter, sports, business, whatever. You'll see someone really working at something when it doesn't appear like they're having any success, or it just seems insurmountable. And that's kind of how it was. And I've gone through situations like that in my life. My documentary points out a couple key ones.
Documentary, Wrestled Away. Wrestled Away. Please go and look it up. I saw it. I was glued to my chair. I loved it. Wrestled Away, the life story of Lee Kemp. It's not over yet. He's available for speaking. So Lee, I want to move forward because we've got just about 15 minutes left. So I want to make sure you've had so many accomplishments. We're going into the next kind of phase. I have a question for you. I want to ask you about, people don't understand how significant an NCAA title is, because you could be a state champ in high school and get defeated in college by a JV person, because the level is so ridiculously high. Now, I wrestled in Pennsylvania. We had 2 national champs. One in Division III, but one in Division I, outstanding wrestler. The requirements are unbelievable. So I want to ask you a simple question. What's more difficult, to win the NCAAs or world champion?
Wow, that's a very tough question. Wow. Well, to win the world, well, what you're delineating is levels of expertise and skill.
Exactly.
So it's like a pyramid, right? So when you're at the lower levels of the pyramid, there's more competition. When you're at the base of the pyramid, there's all kinds of competition. So you get up at the top. So high school may be kind of toward the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
National tournament is toward the bottom. To win the Worlds or Olympics is kind of at the top. So, but your skill has gotten you there. So you may only need to beat one or two really, really tough people to be an Olympic champion. Maybe, and like everybody else, you're so much better than that you can beat those people maybe a little bit easier. But when you're down there and your skill level is down there where there's more competition, it's harder. So I guess to be very clear, it's more competitive at the lower levels because there's just more people. There's more people at the lower levels of the pyramid, more people. And someone could step up, someone could have a great performance, someone could get lucky or whatever. But when you move up the pyramid, the skill level gets so great that you weed out a lot of the competition.
Well, that's
true. The competition is very keen, though. I mean, it's very tough, very skilled.
Well, we'll see as you move up the pyramid, you see that defense is more important than offense, or at least equally. Counter moves become very important versus just being aggressive. So I 3-time national champ, very competitive. I just want to let people know how difficult that is. 2-time state champ. And now you go to college, you get your 3-time. Then what happened from there? Now you graduate college, 3-time national champ, almost 4-time. What did you go from there?
When I went to college, I think it's important to point out, when I entered college, there had never been a 4-time national champion before. I entered college in 1975.
Has there been one since then?
Oh yeah, there's been about 6 since then.
Wow. Okay.
But my goal was to be the first one. And the coaches had never really heard someone talk like that. Probably thought I was maybe being a little bit naive, maybe. But the point I want to make is that was how high I was setting my goals. I wanted to do something that had never been done before. So after I lost that match on a referee's decision where, the officials just sat and between themselves, within 20 seconds, they just voted who they thought was the better wrestler. I got a vote from one of the officials and the other 2 voted for the other guy. I didn't lose another college match after that, though. I won my...
Wow.
Wow. So,
what was your total record in college? How many wins? I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, it was 143 wins, 6 losses, and 1 tie. And 5 of those losses came my freshman year. And the other loss I did have as a junior, it was to a wrestler that was not in college. It was to an older wrestler. So that wouldn't be considered a collegiate loss. No. Still a loss. So I was 110, 1-1 my last 3 years. I ended up tying a wrestler, one of my stiffest competitors from Iowa State University, Kelly Ward. We tied in it was an all-star match. We tied 5-5, and then we wrestled again in the national finals, and the score was 10-8. So Kelly was a really tough competitor. But yes, of my 6 losses, they only were to 3 people. Wow. I lost a couple guys twice my freshman year.
Wow, that's phenomenal. Now, tell me about the World Championships. Now you're on a whole different stage.
That was my senior year in senior year in college, 1978. I'd won my 3rd national title, and I was a business school major too, which was a very difficult major at the University of Wisconsin. So in the spring, I used that time to just catch up with school. So there is a national tournament to select our USA team that will compete in the World Championships. I didn't go to that tournament because I was trying to finish school and trying to graduate and all that. So my college coach challenged me to go as a special invitee to the training camp in the summer. This was after I graduated, to try to make that team. And I did that, and I made the team. And by making the team, I was USA representative in the World Championships. I was on a team of veteran wrestlers, people that I looked up to, people that had won world medals. And I was the only American to win a world title that year, 1978. I was 21 years old, and I was the youngest American to ever win a world title at that point. If you consider that a record of firsts, it hadn't been. It was broken 30 years later. That's how difficult it is to win a world title, to be 21 or younger.
Wow.
Kyle Snyder is another one of our very talented American wrestlers. He is now the youngest American to win a world title. He did it at 19, if you can believe that. He did that at age 19 in the year 2015. So I won my world title in 1978. We're in 2015. You have people like Kyle Snyder who was good enough to win a world title at 19 years old. Henry Cejudo, who won an Olympic gold medal in the 2008 Olympic Games, he broke my record by a couple months. He was 21 years old, but he was a few months younger than me. So from 1978 to 2008, that's when it was first broken, and then 2015.
So this guy Ward that you wrestled here, he was a 3-time NCAA champ? And
no, we were. Kelly took second to me 2 years in a row.
I see.
So I was a year older than Kelly, so I beat him as a junior and senior in the national tournament. However, that picture there, he is in the closing seconds of the national tournament my senior year. I'm winning the match, but he started to make a strong comeback, and he is grinding heavily, as you could see by the look on my face. But the buzzer went off. I won 10-8, and I was a 3-time national champion. Kelly then went on the next year to become a national champion himself. So Kelly was a 3-time NCAA finalist.
Okay. Wow, that's really amazing. So World Championship, when 1978 was your first. Here we go. 1975. This is the NCAA's. 1977 is the collegiate athlete, the NCAA's. Then we have the pictures here. Tell us. So what the world first time you were was 1978. Was that the first time you competed and you won?
Yes, this was my first international competition at the senior level. Yes.
By the way, do you still have this outfit? The right here at the bottom, the blue and the white from the Olympic things?
No, I don't actually. No, I don't.
I do. I ran with the torch in the 1984 Olympics, and I still have my outfit.
Oh, very nice.
I still have my torch.
Very nice.
Here's your documentary. So the first year you entered the World Championships, you won?
Yes.
Wow. That's amazingly. And then you won it 2 years after that, 3 years in a row. Was that how you did it?
I won it 2 years in a row, 1978 and 1979. And then 1980, I was ranked number 1 in the world, and our country boycotted the Olympic Games. So
yeah, let's talk about that. That's a tough thing. That's really tough thing to deal with, because you were ranked number 1. You were ready to go win the Olympics, the pinnacle of success. Even though you're 3rd-time world champ, everybody wants to be Olympic champ. And they canceled it. They even threatened everybody, as I remember, that if you went to a different country, that they were going to arrest you or not let you back in the country if you wrestled for another country. So that's a horrible situation. You kind of crashed after that. It was a difficult situation, as I understand it from your documentary.
You know, there's a lot of things psychologically that goes on when you have something devastating like that. My whole life was built around being an Olympic champion, and I trained for it. I was the way I describe it to people. It's like if you had a high goal, like being a doctor, and from day one, high school, you know you want to be a doctor, so you get good grades, you discipline yourself, you become prepared, you go to a very top-notch college, you go into pre-med, you're 4.0, now you get accepted to medical school, like just following the plan, and you're in your last quarter, semester, whatever, in medical school, and you get the news that your college has been discredited, so that no longer a degree from there is going to carry the merit that's needed to become a doctor. So, and you put it all the time, you're just down into the last quarter. you've put in 8 years almost. And you ask, well, surely the credits I've done are going to transfer. I'll just transfer to another college. They say, oh, no, you can't transfer. You have to start all over. You got to go to medical school all over again. That's what it was like. For people to really get the gravity of what it's like to have to train for another 4 years and get to a high level enough.
It's not easy.
To not only make the team, but to be Olympic champion. That's what Jimmy Carter, the president at the time, was asking our American athletes, and not just American athletes, or 500 or so American athletes. He convinced or encouraged or forced or whatever our allied nations to not go, like Japan and Canada and whatever, the UK. Although Great Britain, they allowed the athletes to make their own choice. Some athletes boycotted, some athletes did not. So that was, that's kind of where the title comes from my documentary, Wrestled Away, the Lee Kemp story. It's something you can't get back. It's like a death. No. It's like a death.
I'm so sorry. I mean, after all that success, have a political decision decide your career. Devastating.
And it didn't mean anything. It didn't save any lives. It was, as I'm learning about a lot of decisions that are done at the political level, they don't make sense to. I'll just leave it there. I don't want to say a whole lot about my personal opinions, but it just, to me, it was the wrong decision. So
I'll say it. It was stupid. Okay.
It was bad. It was worse than bad.
I think the American people kind of feel that way. We kind of agreed. So it became difficult. You won the world championships the next year, right? After that.
Actually, in 1981, the next year, I took third. I won a bronze. And there's some, like, my father passed away that year, not making excuses or anything, but it was
that's tough.
It was a difficult year coming off in 1980 because the choice had to be made. What am I going to do with my life? I mean, not that my life was going to be like, like Michael Phelps, he wins a gold medal, was going to become a millionaire. Wrestling didn't hold that as an option, but still, I didn't really know what I was going to do with my life, So,
you know what? It should have that option. It should. I think so. Wrestling is a beautiful sport. The very first sport in history, wrestling.
Yeah, it's one of the oldest.
The oldest. Running and wrestling. My two favorites, by the way.
So
go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to finish that thought. So I made the decision to try to compete because that was all, and so I made the decision to go for another 4 years. So I'm in the World Championships, and I won a bronze medal. And
you're breaking up here, Lee. You're on mute. Lee's on mute, so you muted yourself. You have to unmute, so we can't hear you. Yeah, there you go, Lee. Go ahead. We have about 6 minutes, and I want to get to some other things. Can you hear us now, Lee? Can you talk, Lee? Can we hear you? Yeah, you're back. You went off for a while.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Finish your thought because I want to get on to a couple other things, if you don't mind.
Okay. I knew after the boycott of '80 that I needed to do something else that was going to prepare me for my future. So I applied to the graduate school, business school of University of Wisconsin. So I was trying to go to grad school in 1981. That year too, my father passed away. It was just a lot going on. I was making a mental shift as to what I was going to do with my life. I got the fuel, the motivation from getting beat by taking third. So in 1982, I beat the wrestler that beat me, and I ended up winning the gold medal again. So I became America's first 3-time world champion. So at that point in 1982, I was the most accomplished American that ever wrestled. And if you consider that a record, I guess I held that for 8 years.
That is a record. Is this your graduation from what, college?
From graduate school.
What was your degree in? Congratulations.
I have a master's of business administration degree, an MBA in marketing from Wisconsin. That's what divided my time after 1980 in order to prepare for my future, because I didn't think wrestling had a future for me.
We're talking about your speaking engagements because that's your new career. We are in preliminary negotiations with Dr. Surajay Khanna and returningyouth.com to see what would be involved with you helping us. And one of the key is with returningyouth.com is the fact that we try to help post-incarcerated youth. We got about 5 minutes. You were married. There was an incident. You ended up in jail. Could you take us through that quickly?
I don't want to give away the documentary. So I won't say exactly what happened. There was no violence involved. It was all done through manipulation and a person who was mentally ill at the time and was diagnosed, but used the system in order to, and my children, to entrap me. So I ended up violating a restraining order, which was put in place bogusly. It was not anything to protect someone from danger. It was just done to keep me from my children.
I want to be honest here. Let's be honest, Lee. There seems to be a higher percentage of African Americans incarcerated than any other group within the United States. Would you say that's true?
Oh, absolutely true. And I'll just interject by when I was getting sentenced, the judge, the white female judge, Judy Alshouse, I'll just even say her name. I hope she does contact me at some point, because that judge, that white female judge, did not care anything about my family. It was obvious. She knew because of the records. I had 3 children. They were small children at the time. She even said during the sentencing, she said, "You have an MBA, you're smart." And you know what she's really most upset about? She saw the violation of the restraining order came by the way, but I just called my son that I hadn't talked to in 6 weeks. He was 12. He called me. I called him back several days later. The ex-wife put him up to that, knowing that I would probably call back, and then she picked up the phone. Anyway, so this judge said, "You're smart, you have an MBA, you've had all this success. You're just a man that just does whatever he wants. You don't follow rules, you don't follow directions." And I said, no.
How do you make that jump?
I tried to speak and she slammed the, "No, listen, just don't, stop talking." And she said, "I could sentence you to 3 months if I want to." Anyway, the point I'm making now, she didn't care about my family. She didn't care that if I was working, I might lose my job. Who's going to take care of these kids? Nothing. And while I was there, all I saw in the courtroom was Black people getting sentenced for stupid, petty stuff.
So this is why we want to see if we can work with you to help that situation in the incarceration in America. Please contact leekemp.com, LEEKEMP.com. 3-time world champ, 3-time NCAA champ, Olympic champion, but it got canceled, taken away. He was favored to win it. Lee, this was very fun for me because I'm an aficionado of wrestling. I love it. I love the sport. I think if you have kids, I would strongly, male or female, suggest go out for that sport because it really teaches you a lot of discipline. It's a very, very difficult sport. So go to leekemp.com. Hey, engage him to be a speaker at your event. He could do it remotely. He could do it live. He could do it there. So we're excited about him. I love this. I felt like we missed a whole bunch of things that I could have talked about. But I want to say, Lee, thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk more in the future as we get on to our next segment. Lee, any closing words you'd like to say?
Well, Gary, I'd like to thank you for inviting me. I appreciate the work that you're doing in incarcerated youth, Black youth in particular. I do have a heart for that because so many of our Black youth are being incarcerated unfairly and unjustly. The system is stacked against young Black youth. And if I had not been adopted into the wonderful family that I was adopted into, and because my biological mother was a teenager when she had me, and she already had a 2-year-old. And so things might have been very different for me had I not gotten out of that situation. So I would not be the Lee Kemp that I'm sitting here today. Now, am I the same person? Yes, I'm the same person. What was different was opportunity and
about 15 seconds.
and the ability to be around some people that could guide me and mentors.
LeeKemp.com. Thank you, Lee, for joining us. We're going to stop the live stream now, and we're going to go on to the next section. Lee will be in touch. Thank you.